church bells, and kilts. What's that got to do with cars? A lot more than you might think, and we'll tell you why this week on Motoring 2003.
TSN's Motoring 2003 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil, oils fine-tuned for different engines, and Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.
You know, for the past 16 years, Motoring has been a program about cars and the people who drive them. Well, this week, we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to begin the program with a sort of social announcement. You know our man behind the wheel on Test Drive, Graham Fletcher. Well, recently, Graham got married. That's right, he tied the knot with the love of his life, Deidre, better known to all her friends as Dee Dee. So where are they going on their honeymoon? Well, apparently, that's to come later. You see, Graham got a call from BMW, and they wanted him to drive their new Roadster. So the poor guy had to fly halfway around the world to some exotic place to cover the launch. So without further ado, let's join our hard-working, old married man, Graham Fletcher.
BMW chose Faro in Portugal to reveal the face of its future. Now, things started to change radically with the launch of the new 7 Series, and it continues with this all-new Z4. Now, to say the styling is controversial, well, it could just be the understatement of the year.
The Z3, its predecessor, was a great car to begin with on the 3 Series platform at the time. And it was a car with a certain amount of dimension and size. And when it came time to do its successor, it was quite clear that we needed to do a car that was a little bit more mature, had a little bit more size, fit people who were larger stature a little bit better. And at that point, with the new engine dynamics, the new driving dynamics, we all felt that it was a car that was one category higher. And so the Z4 seems to match the car the best. As you see, we did everything possible to give this look of a really long hood, including creating 2 belt lines for the car. One of them is the extension of this hood surface, runs all the way back here around, and lets you sit within the car a little bit. So you're not so exposed, but you actually sit in and can drive it like that. The other line, which is probably even more important, comes from the headlights all the way back along the fender and dips down here and arcs up over the rear wheel. Now that's a real classic sports car line. So that whole proportional layout from the basic lines is one of the most important things about the Z4, which separates it from any other cars.
I think to me the styling of this new car is a bit of disconnectedness is the way I'd describe it. The front end doesn't seem to match the back end, and particularly if you look along the side of the car, there's a line that drives right into the rear wheel well, which is very round, and the rear wheel well is very round and very pronounced, but the line kind of, instead of blending in, it intersects it in a kind of a very abrupt way, and I'm not big on that, so I would revise some of that disconnectedness a little bit if I were the stylist. Of course I'm not, I'm an English major, so what the heck. Yeah.
Our buyers are very sophisticated people. The buyer of a Roadster car, I think, is a little less conservative than would be a buyer of perhaps a sedan model. In this respect, a little more avant-garde design is not going to be taking as much of a risk.
We've had to raise the tail here, and that lets the car have better downforce, because this distance here behind the cockpit to the rear of the car is very, very, very short. That's another part of those great proportions, but that means you have to keep this point a little bit high so that when the air comes over it, it gives you downforce here, better traction.
You know, a lot of stylists these days talk about a car that when it's still, it looks like it's in motion, and to me when this car is in motion it looks like it's still, which seems to me a little bit backwards.
I really like it. I think that a weekend fun car, which is what the Z4 is going to be, needs to be exciting and fun even before you get in and drive it. And I think the styling is an event in itself.
Well, the philosophy of our roadsters is make a roadster pure. In this car, we tried to take that purism, the proportions, how the car drives, how it sits, how it looks, really to a new sense of, well, as I say, perfection. In terms of the design language, though, we took a real jump forward into modernism with this car, and I think that's what makes it exciting.
That's a tough question, whether I'm for it or against it. Personally, no, I'm not for it. I think, though, that it is worth keeping in mind that the designs that we often dislike early, Ford Taurus is a classic example. In 1985, when that came out, everybody said it looked like a potato and that it would never work. But that style look became the definition of the look for almost all manufacturers over the next decade. So I think it's worth saying that, yes, I'm not a big fan, but let's take a kind of a wait and see approach, because maybe designers know something more than we do, and I think I'm willing to give them a benefit of the doubt because the rest of the car is engineered so well.
Premium roadster segment is really driven by new product, and we're pleased to be the first into the market with a really new product.
There's no question the design of the Z4 is controversial. Some love it, others hate it. To my eyes, well, I like it, with the exception of this line that runs from the A-pillar down to the wheel. To me, it just seems out of place. Anyway, we'll have much more on the Z4 as we bring you a full test drive on an upcoming show.
What do you call people who are lying dead at the bottom of St. John's Harbor? They'd be come from a ways who tell Newfie jokes. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
This grille is all you really need to see, because behind it is the fastest production Jaguar ever. This week on Test Drive, we let the cat out of the bag as we put the S-Type R through its paces. Mentioned Jaguar, and the image conjured up is that of an exotic piece of automotive machinery. Now this has held true for the interior and the looks, but somehow always fell shy when it came to the mustard in the engine bay. Certainly the addition of the R versions of the XJ and XK help matters, but in the S-Type R, the Jaguar has unleashed the most ferocious feline yet. The secret to the S-Type R's prodigious power lives and breathes beneath the sculpted hood. A 4.2-litre V8 that's married to a supercharger. This combination delivers a road-ripping 400 horsepower, 408 pounds-feet of torque at 3,500 RPM, and a mad dash from rest to 100k of just 5.6 seconds. To state the obvious, there is never a lack of power. The secret to this Jaguar's power, supercharger aside, is found right under this little bit of plastic. These two silver boxes are in fact liquid-to-air intercoolers. Now their sole function in life is to cool the supercharged air as it goes into the engine. This allows more fuel, which equates to a bigger bang, which gives you the tremendous power this engine puts out. Now to make sure that these two boxes keep their cool, there's a third intercooler down at the front. Just goes to show that some of the best things in life are indeed simple. To handle the horses, the S-Type R employs traction control, a dynamic stability control program, an enormous 245/40 front and 275/35 ZR18 rear tyres to ensure the road and power remain good friends, even on a slippery surface. The R's reworked suspension also includes CATs. This means a two-stage adaptive damping ride control system that switches the shocks back and forth between soft and firm settings, which further improves the body control. Through the pylons, this showed up as a flat and unflustered run, where the steering's every move is obeyed with unerring accuracy. There's a couple of items worthy of note on the center console. First of all, believe it or not, this is the parking brake. Lifting it sets the parking brake, pushing it down disengages it. Now if you set the parking brake go away, when you come back and you select drive, the car automatically disengages the parking brake, meaning there's no chance of you driving away with it still on. Then you get to the transmission. Now this is one of the weaker points on the car. First of all, it's got 6 automatic gears, which is a good thing. But over here, this is where you're supposed to shift the gears manually, and after all, this is a performance car. Unfortunately, the gate is rather sloppy, and so you end up focusing more attention on this than on the fast corners hurtling towards you. This thing really does need a proper manumatic transmission. Something along the lines of Porsche's Tiptronic would work wonders. A larger set of brakes and a sophisticated anti-lock system ensure the engine's power is reined in whenever needed, and with a top speed of 250k, this happens more than might be prudent. On the skid pad, however, this equated to short, fade-free stops that measured just 104 feet from 80k. Inside the S-Type R, you'll find somewhat of a split personality. On the one hand, you'll find all the luxury and opulence you expect of a Jaguar. Full leather, automatic climate controls, and a very good radio with a 6-disc CD changer. On the other, well, it speaks to the sporty side. Much bigger bolstering through the base and backrest of the seat, and a nice chunky steering wheel. But then you get to a throwback to the Jaguar of old, and it comes in the form of this windshield, where there's hundreds of little wires laminated into the screen. Now in winter, they defrost the front windshield, which is a good thing. On a bright sunny day, they're distracting, which is anything but. Along with the requisite airbags and electronic trickery, the S-Type R has 2 additional safety aces up its sleeve. Power adjustable pedals, which keeps those with short legs far enough away from the steering wheel, and ARTs. The adaptive restraint technology system employs ultrasonic sensing and an array of other sensors to monitor such things as the front passenger's weight, driver position, seatbelt usage and crash severity. This information is then used to ensure the safety devices are deployed in the best possible manner. So there you have it, the cat really is out of the bag. At one time, if you wanted a 4-door sedan, but also wanted a street-legal racer, you had but one choice, and that was the BMW M5. You now have a second choice in the form of the S-Type R. It is a luxurious 4-door sedan with a truly supercharged personality.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns tire noise. An erratically or unevenly worn tire can produce an awful lot of noise. It's really annoying, and it can often be misconstrued as a bad wheel bearing. Now, replacing a wheel bearing can be a very expensive proposition on a modern car, so you don't want to incorrectly replace a bearing trying to get rid of a noise that was in fact a bad tire. Now, this tire is so badly cupped that I can actually feel the problem. When I spin it, you can see that the inner rib is kicking my fingers all over the place. That's the one with the bad cupping, and that's what produces the noise. When I come over to this side of the tire, you can see that it runs smoothly. But on the inboard side, all kinds of erratic wear. Now, what you've got to do to repair that is correct the alignment situation, the misalignment situation that caused that cupping in the first place, and then rotate the tires on a regular basis. After the tire becomes as badly cupped or unevenly worn as this one is, the tire's got to be replaced. Reset the wheel alignment with a proper 4-wheel alignment, and then rotate the tires at least once a year. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Today we're at the Toyota Camry Matrix plant, and what is happening today is the Formula One team. Mika Salo and Alan McNish are the 2 Toyota Formula One drivers. The 2 drivers and a couple of their personnel are coming down to entertain, I guess, for the most part, the people at the plant. We're also going to do some demonstrations of what the plant does with their test track, how they test the vehicles. So they'll drive the test track that we're standing on right now, as well as we're doing a demonstration between the two-wheel drive Matrix and the four-wheel drive Matrix. We're going to have the Toyota test drivers match up against the Formula One drivers in the drag race, which is on beach sand or play sand that you find in a kid's sandbox. We elevate the vehicles off the surface so that we can demonstrate the ability of the four-wheel drive. And even though we're going to be using a XRS versus the four-wheel drive, the XRS having 185 horsepower versus the two-wheel drive, which will have about 130 horsepower, we should see the four-wheel drive with the lesser horsepower excel, just because of it being a slippery surface.
One thing about Toyota that's slightly different to most of the other teams in Formula One, there's a massive big family behind it, worldwide family, and everybody is behind the program and encouraging us, and so it's good to come and see the guys on the actual shop floor.
It's great fun. It's good motivation for everybody here because they're part of our Toyota family, and without them we wouldn't be racing, so it's important that we do things for them also sometimes.
You know, with each week we get that much closer to our Car of the Year special, and this year we'd like to involve you, our viewers, in the selections. So what we're going to do is list our nominees for each segment on the Motoring webpage at motoringtv.com and invite you to select your winners, and we'll compare the results on the Car of the Year program. And you never know, there might be a prize or two up for grabs, so stay tuned for that. Right now it's time to head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Hey Brad, does this actually mean I'll get to vote this year for which pickup truck I think will be Car of the Year? I probably wouldn't vote anyways, because you know what, I don't trust any piece of machinery when it's brand new. I want to see what it's like after 4 or 5 Canadian winters. What I want to talk about this week, however, is engine mounts. And we've had a lot of email from viewers lately complaining about problems with their cars, noise, vibration, harshness, clunks, etc. And worn engine mounts could possibly be the answer for many of their problems. Now, engine mounts typically support the weight of the engine, position the engine, and control the movement of the engine. They also eliminate vibration and harshness from coming into the chassis of the car by using rubber for isolation. Now, this particular mount right here doesn't support weight, but it does control the position of the top of the engine. And you can see a large air gap over here, and it's split on this side. And if I pull the car back and forth, it's in park right now, you can see how much movement there is in these mounts. And that movement in this particular car happens to be producing a clunk that's quite annoying. Now, we've had a lot of email lately from people complaining about noise and harshness coming into their vehicle when they're sitting with an automatic transmission vehicle in drive at a base idle, say for example, sitting waiting for a traffic light to change. If you're feeling an awful lot of harshness coming into the vehicle, you may in fact have an engine mount that's failed. Sometimes if engine oil gets onto them, they'll disintegrate. They can just fail from normal wear and tear, stress from you driving the car quite briskly. There's a number of different reasons why they can fail, but when they do fail, you're going to feel that vibration and harshness coming through into the chassis of the vehicle. If you've got that, you want to check for worn mounts. Now, the way that we check for them is a little bit risky, so I advise that you don't do it yourself. It's something you want to have your mechanic or technician do for you. It involves putting the car into gear and actually putting it under load to watch for the movement in these mounts. So what we do is we stand off to the side of the car, never in front of or behind the car. We have an assistant put the car into gear and actually put it under a little bit of load in drive and then in reverse to look for that slop or slack in the mounts. If it's a broken mount, there'll be extreme movement of the engine, and you're going to see it when you put it under load. But don't try it yourself. Have your technician do it for you if you suspect one of those symptoms that I mentioned earlier that could be indicative of a worn or broken engine mount. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2003.
We're lucky here on Motoring. We travel all across this great country, and everywhere we go, we meet hundreds of people that just love the show. I tell you, you never get tired of meeting people who love what you do. But I gotta say, we never get any better reception than what we do in Newfoundland. Most people are fantastic. And I don't know why we make jokes about them, because well, we could learn an awful lot from them. Not just about how to have a good time or how to welcome people into their homes either. We could learn a thing or two about traffic management. Because on the Trans-Canada Highway between St. John's and Gander, which I drove on recently, whenever there are two lanes heading in the same direction and they have to cut one lane back, they cut the left lane. There's a sign painted right on the road, merge right. Well, what's so surprising about that? You say, I mean, that's obvious. I mean, the driving lane is a driving lane. If you have to add a lane, you add it to the left. If you got to cut that lane back, you cut it back from the left. So why doesn't anybody else in North America do it that way? I don't know. I mean, you should be able to get on the right lane in the Trans-Canada Highway in St. John's and drive to Victoria and never have to change lanes, can you? No, at least after you leave Newfoundland. It's even worse in the city of Toronto. The 401 going across the top of the city, the right lane often turns into an off-ramp. You have no idea where you're going. I don't know if you read the book or saw the movie Bonfire of the Vanities. Well, that was the basic plot point. The guy gets onto an off-ramp, gets in the wrong part of town, runs a guy over. Well, it was a terrible book and it was a worse movie, but it makes a pretty good point. The right lane is sacred. Don't let it go away. Now, my question is, how does it get this way? I mean, the guys driving the line painting trucks, they don't just paint these things at random. Somebody's telling them to do it that way. I just want to find out who that person is. Why are they telling them to do this? I don't know, maybe some of you got a brother-in-law who's a traffic engineer, you know, a website I can go to find out this question. I just don't get it, but I'm glad the Newfoundlanders do. All right, Jim Kenzie.
You remember off the top of the program when I mentioned that Graham Fletcher recently got married? Well, as you'd expect, Graham didn't do the usual limo to and from the church. What vehicle were they in? We'll roll the video, and as you can see, it's a bright yellow Hummer. And apparently it wasn't Graham who selected the vehicle, but rather his new bride, Dee Dee. This girl's got some class, unlike, but we won't get into that now, except to say we'll see you next week as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
I think it's probably the prettiest car on the market. It will be as soon as it arrives on the market. It's absolutely stunning. And I think it's going to win some sales for them, for people that might be considering things like 330 CIs.
TSN's Motoring 2003 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. Oils fine-tuned for different engines. And Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.